Hi, Helen.
Hi, Giedre.
Happy International Women's Day.
Thank you, and to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, actually, it's a great opportunity for us to talk about women in leadership. And I would really like to question you and to talk to you about what it means to build something truly meaningful, because you've created Academic Summer, Academic Camp. And it's not only business. We can see that this is a place for everyone to shine, for opportunities, for connections, for innovations. Because for students, it does provide a place for diverse educational experience. For teachers, it gives a space for creativity. For the team, a very international team, and we can successfully collaborate. So indeed, you've managed to connect, I would say, the impossible technologies with human connections, structure, because you are a very logically minded person, I assume, with creativity. So it really, it seems that you are in the leadership, which is making impact. So being one of the team, I'd like to talk to you about this leadership and about education and all these amazing things that you do. So my first question, if I may, would be being in this education sector and in business for over 25 years, what's the leadership lesson that truly shaped you? Maybe there's something that you didn't expect when you started.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to thank you, Giedre, for your very kind words. It's you want to make me feel all emotional. I think, yeah, I think it was a gradual thing for me. I hated school. I left school when I was 16, but then I, gradually fell into education and then obviously got a real passion for it. And I really enjoy what I do. But in terms of leadership and what shaped me, I think it was maybe sort of bad experiences of leadership in a way, and insecure leaders, and both in my personal life and career, where you had bad experiences of how you wanted to be treated, or
Mhm.
that you weren't able to really shine and perform in the best way. So I always wanted to lead differently. I always wanted to really give room for people to shine and not be afraid if, say, someone has better skills than me. Actually, I think a good leader is often someone who is not always at the front, but someone who is, alongside, mentoring, or actually just, pushing someone forward and saying, look what this person has done. It's an amazing idea they've had. Look at their skills. So I guess it was from a mixture of experiences in the past that actually, you know, made me want to sort of lead in a different way and more of a servant in leadership. I think the other thing which surprised me often is how lonely it is at the top.
Mhm.
There's a lot of decisions you have to take where
Yeah.
you can't always speak to other people in the team. So I love having my own business and being able to make decisions of when I work and when I don't, and the freedom that comes with that. But
Mhm.
I think sometimes the responsibility is quite heavy and quite real. And that's why the right team around you is important as well.
As you mentioned, there are some challenges, and it's interesting to hear about them as well. So, what would you name was the hardest decision if you had to make any very hard decisions?
I think the most difficult time for the company,
Hmm.
and obviously I personally was actually going through the COVID years, because that
Hmm.
was, extremely hard. When sort of the lockdowns came in, it was the worst time in sort of our cash flow
Hmm.
cycle of the year. It's like, I've got no money. How do I pay people? How do we survive as a company? And so that was a really hard point. And obviously that you have all the personal things going on around that, of how you personally are dealing with it, worrying about family. And at the time, my mum was extremely ill, so we were
Hmm.
sort of caring for her at the same time. So there was a lot going on. But I think, again, that's where sort of having a really good accountant, having sort of the faith to believe that, we would get through it. And I think being honest, I think honesty was the biggest lesson for me, was that, you know, everyone was in the world was finding it hard. So actually to just be real with people and honest, and work out how you were going to support another business owner who was struggling, you know, and how you could support each other so that you both were able to get through. So yeah, lots of lessons to be learned, but it was a difficult time.
Yeah, very true. Coming back to the team that you've mentioned, and indeed we are very international, and this is something that I really love about our company, that you've managed to select so diverse people, not only in terms of their nationalities, but in their skills, abilities, and even perspective. So what do you think is the key of building a strong and successful international team?
I think that's what makes academic summer special, is that diverse team. And I think the important thing is making sure everyone feels accepted and valued, and there's no sort of nationality that's more prominent, or their culture is valued more. It's like we're on an equal playing field, that there isn't a right or wrong way of doing things, that we just have different ways. And actually probably one of the ways that I have changed is that, from being married to someone from a different nationality, but also leading an international team, is that you learn a lot about being a bit more direct. And I know that sometimes my husband tells me off for being too direct and saying things that I should think about before I say them sometimes. So whereas British people normally go around in a circle and you don't know what they really mean. So I guess that, and I've come to realize, for example, there's different ways of being direct. So you can have sort of the jokey way of being direct to someone who just is so brutally honest that you think, oh, wow, I can't believe they just said that.
Yeah.
So I think it is making sure there's a place for people to share their opinions, we celebrate diversity and differences, that we can learn from each other. And I'm beginning to learn a bit more about how important that is, of course, the generation gaps as well, that you tend to think, oh, we all get to the same age group, but how do we communicate better with Generation Z, or how do we communicate better with younger people? And I think maybe that's something where we need to sort of think some more about, but it is understanding different people and feeling the value of that it makes you a more experienced and a richer person, because you've got that, you're not just listening to your own news, you're hearing about what everyone else thinks on a topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And then let's continue on this international topic and international competence in our students that we also aim to develop. So why do you think it's very important in this world today, again, for students to meet everybody internationally? And from your international experience, like you've mentioned, even your spouse is different nationality. So why is it important for this young generation to meet students across the globe?
Well, I think it's probably the greatest thing that's going to help world peace in the long term. I think some of the things we've seen in the media in the last week is some of that is, a lack of cultural awareness of someone else's culture and understanding. And I think for people to have a cultural awareness, and to be able to critically think and question, and listen to people respectfully, I think is actually really good skills to have. Education is really important, and I think it's Nelson Mandela that said education can change the world, and that's always very important to me, is that someone who is educated, who really we can teach how to think critically, how to question, how to be creative, and that's done in a cultural perspective with different nationalities, with that same mentality, is there's not a right and the wrong way. Just because I'm British, I'm right. That's the wrong mentality. But actually there's room to look at different ways of doing things and be open and working together. I think that's going to be the most powerful thing for the future.
Yeah. So do you also think that these stereotypes that possibly women are less appreciated, or it's more difficult for them to get the way through in leadership, it's maybe something already old-fashioned stereotype, or have you ever felt that it's indeed still a little bit more difficult for a woman to be in leadership?
I think in general, I think it's not an old thing. I think that the stereotypes is still there, and I think it's quite hard for a woman in business because they have to often juggle when they have children and their home life with with their business and their career and what they want to do, and that's hard decisions for anyone to make. So and I still feel that a woman has to be quite strong in their character to be able to stand up in the business community. I think within education, I think there's a lot of women in education. So a lot of our agents, the businesses are run by women. So I think in our industry, it's probably a lot easier as a woman. But I think in other industries I come against, I think some of that is still there. But I really believe that women bring something really special to the table. And one of the biggest things is a woman's instinct, their instinct to believe that something is right, their instinct to feel that something is not feeling right and what's going on here. I think that is something that is very special about what women bring to the table. I think, their empathy, multitasking, I think women have to have a lot on their shoulders, a lot of responsibility, and I think women in general do that very well. So we should have more women in business, Giedre, I believe.
I completely agree to that. Yeah, very true. Coming back about your leadership style, you mentioned that earlier you met some leaders and you were observing their leadership style, and you wanted to create something slightly different. And has your leadership style has changed over the years when you started, when you had your aims in leadership, and when you see yourself today? So do you think your style has evolved anyhow? You've changed?
I think everyone changes, and I think we should all be willing to embrace change and to change. And there's obviously things in the way you speak to people sometimes, and maybe not giving people the right, because I think one of the dangers of especially a woman actually is that people expect you to be emotional and encouragers, and if you're naturally an entrepreneur, you have to sometimes stop yourself and say, I need to give this person encouragement because they need to feel they're valued. And that's something I probably have to push myself to remember to do more often, because I know how wonderful my team is, but do I say it enough? Because I'm like one step ahead often. So I think you do become wiser as well. The more experience you have, you become wiser. As I mentioned, I really feel that leadership should be that servant and mentor, and it's knowing how that fits with the entrepreneurship of someone who's really forward thinking. So there's lots to juggle and think about. And I think especially nowadays, there's much more value put on thought leadership than there used to be. In a way, in the beginning of academic summer, I could almost hide behind the scenes. I didn't have to be that upfront person, whereas in more recent days, I felt that I've had to be more of the leader publicly and the more the thought leader, and to have that voice so people know who is behind that brand. I think that's become more important.
Yeah. On this, so what do you think could be the most fulfilling, or a couple of most fulfilling moments in your career when you feel like, goodness, this is now, I know why I'm doing this. I feel this amazing reward. So do you feel this reward often? And can you share some experience regarding this?
I think actually starting my own business and building it and getting it through tough times, I think that's really rewarding. Like academic summer does feel like my baby quite often, which is probably not always right, but you know, it is. I feel very passionate about it. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy having the freedom of having my own business. If that means, oh, the weather's really good today, I'm going to go for a walk, I can make that decision and then work later at night. So I love that about having my own business. And I think making a difference in people's lives as a company, I think that's been really rewarding. You know, we've recently done sort of entrepreneurship camps that I've done a little bit of teaching on, and to see some of the presentations of the young people at the end of the week and hearing some of their business ideas, you sort of, wow, that's amazing, you know. And you know, when you say, hear a student make a profound comment, or you know, you can really have, you know, get really excited about the future and the future leaders that are coming through. Sometimes that's not always the case, obviously, but and then sort of seeing some of our ex-students on sort of LinkedIn and seeing what they've achieved, and you know, that's
Absolutely.
special. And staff, you know, and staff going on to bigger and better things, on developing their skills.
Absolutely. So we are looking even for a brighter future, because it looks like today really the things are thriving. And how do you see the future? How do you see academic summer, let's say, in 5 or 10 years?
I think that's really hard, actually. I think that's the hardest time in the last 20 years to answer that question,
Oh.
because you know, things are changing so fast, and I think in 5 years' time our future could look very different. You know, the way the pace of change, the pace of the way that AI and technology is moving, it's really hard to predict. You know, it's hard to predict what type of summer camp often a student is wanting and looking for, and how that is changing. And so I think that's the challenge, is to really keep doing what we are good at, is like, what do young people need for their future to help them fulfill their future dreams? Because we, you know, we may think it's just a 2-week summer course, but to see some of the young people and the way they've developed, all of those young people, if you're still in contact with them, will say, actually, my experience started on the summer camp that gave me the inspiration to be a doctor, or to continue that, quite a hard career line, but that helped them to sort of really get that passion and motivation to do that sometimes. And so that's important to be able to say, well, what do young people need in the future? And I believe at the moment that is probably things like critical thinking, you know, creativity. You know, we can't ignore technology, but we have to guide students safely to embrace technology, not to fear it and ban it, but we do need to cover things like safety within that. But also that when they read something online, they know how to critically think about if that's right or wrong. You know, how do I know if that's true or if it's fake? So I guess my vision for the future is that I can lead and keep us ahead of what young people need, and that actually one of those biggest things for me at the moment is actually helping people to manage how to deal with change. That we don't sort of look at change and think, I don't want to change, but we, you know, embrace change with excitement, that we can be change makers and we can make a difference in the future.
Yeah. You also have decided to introduce a leadership course on our academic summer, and that very much now explains me as to why you think it's very important. But just once again, why do you think we have to raise future leaders, and how does this course, beside learning academic subjects, beside inspiring them to choose certain professions, why in the summer camp over 2 weeks period of time we also need to speak about leadership?
Yeah, I think sometimes that makes people a bit fearful. I'll be a leader is like, well, I'm not a leader. I don't want to be a leader. But I think when people stop to think, everyone is a leader in a certain point of their life, whether that's within a relationship, whether that's within a family situation, whether that's in a just a department in a company, or if it's running their own company. Everyone at some point needs to have those leadership skills. So if we think, for example, of negotiation, it's not just that business owner who needs to be able to negotiate, but if you want to be wise with your money, even someone who's just going out and buying a car or buying something for their house, those are useful skills to make sure they're getting the best deal. I think another skill we often cover is communication skills, and everyone needs to know how to communicate, whether that's sort of an employee asking their boss for a pay rise, or whatever situation they need to how to work with people and communicate that. So I think I'll Be a Leader program is not just about those upfront leaders, but it's giving people really good soft skills for the future that's going to help them to manage their finance, manage their careers, manage their dreams better. And obviously we do the careers test as part of that, where students have access to that after the summer to be able to continue exploring different options for them. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's very beneficial for the students indeed, to become leaders in their lives, as you say. If a student in academic summer comes to you and says, I want to become a leader in business, what piece of advice would you give? What would you say the student how to start, or just a piece of advice?
I would say go for it, dream big, don't be afraid, and fight for what you want to do in your future. And I think that's the most important thing for anyone who is not what your parents want you to do. It's what gives you the passion, because you spend a lot of time working in your career, and you should be doing something you enjoy and you've got a passion to do.
Great inspiration. And to finish up with something really wonderful that you have initiated, our company is involved in charity organization Theirworld, which is helping to ensure that all children can get access to education. So why do you think it's important for any business to play such a role in society?
I think business owners have a responsibility, because we often have the means. We all, most companies make some sort of profit, and by giving, there's tax relief in that by giving, but there is also, you're making a difference to your community around you, to people around you, whether that's looking after the environment, whether that's helping someone who is less fortunate and needs a step up. I think that's important. I am a Christian and I believe it is important to give and make a difference. But we chose Theirworld because of their educational link. And I'm very inspired by them in the way that they fight for girls in education, that they, go to places of conflict and make sure that children can access education, and that they're also caring about early year learning, which I think is, we underestimate someone who is in primary age group, that actually at the primary age group is so important to the brain development, and really getting kids on the good road, and education does change them and is important. So I think what they're doing is great. They also have the Young Ambassadors program, and that I think is a great opportunity for someone who is over 18 and want to do something with a gap year, or part of what they're doing when they're studying is that they can really be the voices in the future leaders of making a difference in their communities and to people around them.
Yeah, sounds really inspiring and very beautiful things. And that's it. With this nice note, we finish our conversation. And thank you so much, Helen, for sharing your thoughts. I think this is an amazing inspiration for all women to be leaders, not only in businesses, but as we've mentioned, in their lives, and especially in education. Every teacher is actually a leader. So listening to you and understanding how important education is, through which we can make the biggest change actually in our world, and that lots of women are really empowered to do so. That's really wonderful. And thank you once again. And everyone, happy International Women's Day.
Yeah, happy International Women's Day, and your theme this year is about empowerment. So be empowered today.